Danny Cole looked out the window of the shuttle and felt his stomach turn. Below him, Earth was getting smaller and smaller. Above him, the massive space station called Horizon's Edge grew larger with every passing second. He had never been to space before. He had never even left Ohio before last week. 3 days ago, Danny was fixing a broken water heater in a small apartment building in Columbus. Now he was on his way to meet aliens from across the galaxy. Life was strange sometimes. The shuttle docked with a gentle bump and Danny grabbed his small bag. Inside was a change of clothes, a toothbrush, and a lunch his mother had packed for him. She had cried when he left. She told him not to eat any alien food because it might make him sick. Danny had laughed and promised to be careful. He walked through the airlock and into the station. The first thing he noticed was how big everything was. The ceiling stretched up so high that he could barely see it. The walls were made of some kind of white metal that glowed softly. Hundreds of creatures walked through the halls, and most of them were not human. Danny saw beings with 4 arms and green skin. He saw tall, thin creatures with heads like birds. He saw something that looked like a walking tree with glowing eyes. He tried not to stare, but it was hard. Everything was so new and so strange. A woman in a dark blue uniform approached him. She had short brown hair and a serious face. Her name tag said Ambassador. "You must be the replacement," she said. "Danny Cole, maintenance specialist." "Yes, ma'am," Danny replied. He felt nervous. He was just a regular guy who fixed things for a living. He did not belong here with diplomats and important people. "Good. We need someone to keep our equipment running during the assembly. The last technician got food poisoning from something he ate at the welcome dinner. Do not eat the purple soup. That is my only advice." Danny nodded. "My mom packed me sandwiches. I think I will stick with those." Ambassador almost smiled. "Smart. The assembly starts in 2 hours. Stay out of the way, keep our communication systems working, and try not to cause an interstellar incident. Can you do that?" "I will do my best, ma'am." She walked away, and Danny was left alone in the huge hallway. He found a map on his tablet and started walking toward the human delegation's quarters. Along the way, he passed dozens of aliens. Most of them ignored him completely. A few looked at him with what might have been curiosity or disgust. It was hard to tell with faces so different from his own. He learned from his briefing materials that humanity was the species in the Galactic Assembly. Earth had only made contact with alien life 15 years ago. To the other races, humans were bobbies. They were primitive newcomers who had barely learned to walk among the stars. Some of the older races had been traveling through space for thousands of years. The Empire was over 10,000 years old. The Dominion had conquered half the galaxy before humans even invented fire. These ancient civilizations looked at Earth the way a grown adult might look at a toddler trying to join a business meeting. Danny did not mind being underestimated. He had been underestimated his whole life. He was not the strongest or the most talented, but he worked hard and he was good at fixing things. That had always been enough. The assembly hall was the largest room Danny had ever seen. It was shaped like a giant bowl, with hundreds of seats arranged in rising circles around a central platform. Each species had its own section, marked with strange symbols and flags. The human section was small and tucked away in a corner. Danny counted only 12 seats. He found a spot near the back where he could watch without being noticed. The delegates began filing in, taking their places with great ceremony. Danny watched as creatures of every shape and size settled into their seats. Some floated in the air. Some sat in special chairs filled with water or gas. One species seemed to exist as a cloud of glowing particles. The delegation entered last. They were tall and thin, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow faintly. Their hair was silver and moved as if blown by a gentle wind that no one else could feel. Their eyes were large and violet, and they looked at everything with an expression of cold superiority. Danny had read about they were the most powerful race in the galaxy. Their empire spanned thousands of worlds, and their technology was far beyond anything humans could understand. They rarely spoke to younger species. They considered it beneath them. The assembly began with speeches. Lots and lots of speeches. Danny did not understand most of what was being said. The translation device in his ear worked well, but the topics were complicated. Trade agreements, territorial disputes, resource allocation. It was all very boring and very important at the same time. After 3 hours, the first recess was called. Danny's stomach was growling. He had been too nervous to eat breakfast, and now he was starving. He remembered the lunch his mother had packed and decided to find a quiet place to eat. He wandered through the station until he found a small observation deck. It was empty and quiet, with a large window that looked out at the stars. Danny sat down on a bench and opened his bag. Inside was a ham sandwich wrapped in plastic, an apple, and a small bag of chips. His mother had also included a note that said, "Be brave. I love you." Danny smiled and took a bite of his sandwich. It tasted like home. That was when he heard a small sound from the corner of the room. He turned and saw that he was not alone. A young female sat huddled in the shadows near the far wall. She was smaller than the other he had seen, and she looked young. Her silver hair hung limp around her face, and her violet eyes were red-rimmed as if she had been crying. She held her arms wrapped tightly around herself. She looked lost, she looked alone, she looked hungry. Danny had grown up in a big family with not much money. He knew what it felt like to be hungry. He knew what it felt like to be ignored and overlooked. Something in the way this alien girl sat there, trying to disappear, made his heart hurt. He thought about what Ambassador had said. Do not cause an interstellar incident. He thought about everything he had read about thee and their cold, proud culture. He thought about how approaching her uninvited might be considered a terrible insult. Then he thought about what his mother would say if she saw a hungry girl sitting alone in a corner. Danny stood up, picked up his lunch, and walked across the room. The female looked up sharply as he approached. Her violet eyes went wide with something that looked like fear mixed with confusion. Her body tensed as if she was ready to run. Danny sat down a few feet away from her. He did not want to scare her. He reached into his bag and pulled out the second half of his sandwich. "Here," he said, holding it out to her. "You look like you could use something to eat. It is just ham and cheese, but my mom makes it pretty good." The alien princess stared at him, as if he had just done the most impossible thing in the universe. The female did not move. She stared at the sandwich in Danny's hand as if it might bite her. Her large violet eyes blinked slowly, and her silver hair drifted around her face in that strange way, that gravity. Danny kept his hand steady and his voice calm. "It is okay. I am not trying to trick you or anything. I just thought you might be hungry." She opened her mouth and then closed it again. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft and musical, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Why would you offer me food?" "Because you look like you need it," Danny said simply. "Where I come from, when someone is hungry, you share what you have. It is not complicated. But you do not know me. Your people and mine have never spoken. We are strangers." Danny shrugged. "So, strangers are just friends you have not met yet. At least that is what my grandmother used to say." The alien girl tilted her head to one side. She seemed to be studying him, trying to understand something that did not make sense. After a long moment, she slowly reached out and took the sandwich from his hand. Her blue fingers were cool against his skin. She examined the food carefully, turning it over and looking at it from different angles. Then she raised it to her nose and sniffed. Her eyes widened slightly. "What is this made of?" she asked. "Ham and cheese. Ham is meat from a pig. Cheese is made from cow milk. The bread is just wheat and water and yeast, nothing special." She took a small bite. Her expression changed from suspicion to surprise to something that looked almost like joy. She chewed slowly, savoring the taste. "This is good," she whispered. "This is very good." Danny smiled. "I will tell my mom. She will be happy to hear it." They sat in silence for a while as the alien girl finished the sandwich. Danny ate his apple and looked out at the stars. It was strange, he thought, how normal this felt. He was sitting on a space station millions of miles from Earth, sharing lunch with an alien princess, and it felt as natural as eating in his mother's kitchen. "My name is," the girl said finally. "I am the fifth daughter of High Empress of the Empire." Danny nearly choked on his apple. A princess. He had just given half his lunch to an actual alien princess. He tried to stand up and bow or do something respectful, but held up her hand. "Please do not. I get enough of that at home. It is nice to be treated like a normal person for once." Danny settled back down. "Okay, I am Danny Cole. I fix things for a living, pipes, wires, machines, whatever needs fixing." "You are a worker," said. It was not a question and there was no judgment in her voice, just curiosity. "Yeah, I am nobody important. I am only here because the regular technician got sick. Wrong place, wrong time. Or maybe right place, right time. I have not decided yet." Looked at him with those deep violet eyes. "You said your people share food when someone is hungry. Is this truly your custom?" "Sure. I mean, not everyone does it, but most people I know would help out a stranger if they could. My mom always said that kindness costs nothing but means everything." "Your mother sounds wise." "She is the person I know. She raised 5 kids on her own after my dad left. She worked 2 jobs and still found time to help our neighbors when they needed it. She taught us that taking care of each other is what makes us human." Was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Among my people, kindness is considered a flaw. We do not share resources freely. Everything is earned through competition and strength. To give without receiving is seen as weakness. It marks you as someone who can be taken advantage of." Danny frowned. "That sounds lonely." "It is." Eyes glistened and Danny realized she was close to tears. "I have 4 older sisters. They are all strong and cold and perfect. They command fleets and govern worlds. They have never shown me anything but contempt because I am the youngest and the weakest. I am nothing to them. I am nothing to anyone." "Hey, that is not true." "It is. I am only brought to events like this to fill a seat, to make our family look complete. No one speaks to me. No one looks at me. I am invisible." A single tear rolled down her blue cheek. "You are the first person in years who has treated me like I matter." Danny did not know what to say. He was not good with words or feelings. He was good with wrenches and circuit boards. But he could see that this girl, this princess from the most powerful empire in the galaxy, was hurting in a way that had nothing to do with hunger. "Well," he said carefully, "you matter to me now. We shared a meal. Where I come from, that makes us friends." Looked at him with an expression of wonder. "Friends?" "Yeah, friends look out for each other. They share food and tell jokes and listen when things are hard. It is one of the best things about being human. We do not have this concept among the. We have allies and enemies and servants and masters. But friends? No, the word does not exist in our language." Danny shook his head. "That is the saddest thing I have ever heard." They talked for a long time after that. Told Danny about her life in the imperial palace, about her cold mother and her cruel sisters, about the loneliness of being born into power but having none of your own. Danny told her about growing up poor in Ohio, about his big noisy family, about the simple joys of fixing things and seeing them work again. They were so different that they should have had nothing in common, but somehow they understood each other perfectly. The second session of the assembly was announced over the speakers and stood up reluctantly. "I must return to my delegation. My mother will be angry if my seat is empty." "Will I see you again?" Danny asked. Hesitated. "I do not know. It is not proper for a princess to associate with." She stopped and looked down. I am sorry, I did not mean to insult you. It is okay. I know what I am. I am just a maintenance guy. But if you ever want to talk or if you get hungry again, you know where to find me. Smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it transformed her face. She looked younger and lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Thank you, Danny Cole, for the food and for the conversation. I will not forget this kindness. She walked away, her silver hair floating behind her. At the door, she paused and looked back. You are not like the others, she said softly. You are not like any of them. Then she was gone, and Danny was alone with his empty lunch bag and a feeling that something important had just happened. He cleaned up his trash and headed back to the human section. Ambassador gave him a curious look when he arrived, but she did not ask any questions. Danny took his seat in the back and tried to focus on the speeches. But his mind kept wandering back to the observation deck, to a lonely princess with violet eyes and a hunger that had nothing to do with food. He had only shared half a sandwich. It was such a small thing. But sometimes, Danny thought, small things were the beginning of something bigger. He did not know how right he was. The next 2 days were busy for Danny. The human delegation's communication equipment kept breaking down, and he spent most of his time crawling through access panels and rewiring circuits. It was hard work, but it kept his mind occupied. He did not see again. He looked for her in the assembly hall, but the section was far away, and the delegates all looked the same from a distance. He wondered if she was okay. He wondered if she thought about their conversation the way he did. On the 3rd day, Danny was fixing a broken translator unit when he heard voices around the corner. He recognized the hissing speech pattern of the reptilian species that controlled much of the outer galaxy. He also heard the clicking sounds of the race known for their ruthless efficiency. Danny stayed quiet and listened. He was not trying to spy. He just did not want to interrupt what sounded like a private conversation. The humans grow too bold, the delegate said. His voice was cold and sharp like broken glass. They have only been among the stars for a handful of years, yet they act as if they belong here. They are a disease, they agreed. Her clicks translated into words that dripped with disgust. They spread across their solar system like a plague. Soon they will reach for more. They always want more. We must stop them before they become a true threat. The Assembly must vote to restrict their expansion, limit their access to resources, keep them contained to their own system. Danny felt his blood run cold. They were talking about cutting off humanity from the rest of the galaxy. They wanted to trap Earth and let it wither while the other races moved forward. They will never agree, they said. They care only for themselves. They will not support sanctions against a species that poses no threat to their empire. Then we must convince them that humans are a threat. We must show them that these primitive apes are dangerous and unpredictable. We will use their own history against them. Their wars, their weapons, their violence. They have killed millions of their own kind. What will they do when they have the power to reach other worlds? The conversation moved away and Danny could not hear any more. He sat in the access panel for a long time, his heart pounding. He had to tell someone. He had to warn the delegation. He found Ambassador in the human quarters, reviewing documents on her tablet. She looked tired. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her uniform was wrinkled. Ambassador, I need to tell you something important. She looked up with a frown. Cole, I told you to stay out of trouble. I know, ma'am, but I overheard something. They are planning to push for sanctions against humanity. They want to restrict our expansion and cut us off from the galaxy. His expression did not change, but something shifted in her eyes. I know. They have been building support for this proposal for weeks. We have been trying to fight it, but the votes are not in our favor. What? Why did no one tell me? Because you are a maintenance technician, Cole. This is not your concern. Danny felt a flash of anger. Not my concern. They want to trap my planet in a cage. They want to make sure we never grow or explore or become anything more than we are right now. How is that not my concern? Sighed and set down her tablet. You are right. I am sorry. The truth is, we are losing. They have been poisoning the well against us since we first made contact. They spread stories about human violence and aggression. They show recordings of our wars and our weapons. To the other species, we look like monsters waiting to be unleashed. But that is not who we are. Yes, we have done terrible things to each other, but we have also done amazing things. We have art and music and kindness. We help strangers. We take care of the sick and the weak. We are not monsters. I know that, you know that. But they do not know that and they do not want to learn. It is easier to fear us than to understand us. Danny thought about. He thought about the surprise on her face when he offered her food. He thought about how she said the word friend did not exist in her language. Maybe we need to show them, he said slowly. Maybe we need to prove that we are more than our worst moments. Gave him a sad smile. How do you suggest we do that? We have no power here, we have no allies, we are alone. Danny did not have an answer, but he knew that giving up was not an option. His mother had taught him that. When things got hard, you did not quit. You kept trying. You kept hopping. You kept believing that things could get better. The next morning, Danny went back to the observation deck. He told himself he was just looking for a quiet place to think, but he knew the real reason. He wanted to see again. She was there, sitting in the same corner where they had first met. Her silver hair was tangled, and her violet eyes were red from crying. When she saw Danny, she tried to wipe her face and compose herself. You came back, she said. I told you I would. Danny sat down next to her, closer this time. What is wrong? What happened? Shoulders shook. My mother found out that I spoke to you. Someone saw us on the observation deck and reported it. She was furious. She said I had disgraced our family by associating with a primitive species. She said I was an embarrassment. Danny felt guilt twist in his stomach. I am sorry. I did not mean to cause trouble for you. It is not your fault. My mother has always been ashamed of me. This was just another excuse. Laughed bitterly. The funny thing is, talking to you was the happiest I have been in years, and I am being punished for it. That is not right. Nothing in my life is right. I was born into the most powerful family in the galaxy, and I am more alone than the beggar on the farthest moon. At least beggars have each other. Danny reached out and took her hand. Her skin was cool and smooth, and she flinched at first but did not pull away. You have me, he said. I know I am just a maintenance guy from a primitive planet. I know I am nobody important, but I am your friend and that is not nothing. Looked at their joined hands with wonder. Among my people, physical contact is reserved for family and mates. It is considered extremely intimate. Danny started to pull his hand back, but held on tight. Do not let go, she whispered. I have never been touched with kindness before. It feels like being warm after a lifetime of cold. They sat together in silence, holding hands and watching the stars. It was a small thing, Danny thought, a simple gesture that cost him nothing, but it meant everything. And in that moment, Danny made a decision. He did not know how and he did not know when, but he was going to find a way to show the galaxy what humanity was really made of. Not violence, not aggression, not conquest. Kindness, compassion, the simple act of reaching out to someone who was alone. It would not be easy. It might even be impossible. But Danny Cole had never let impossible stop him before. The final day of the assembly arrived with the weight of doom hanging over the human delegation. Danny could see it in their faces as they gathered for the last session. Ambassador looked like she had not slept in days. Her aides whispered among themselves with nervous energy. The proposal from the delegation was simple and devastating. Humanity would be restricted to their home system. No colonies beyond Mars. no trade agreements with other species, no access to the galactic communication network. Earth would be cut off from the rest of the universe, isolated and alone. Danny watched from his usual seat in the back as the delegate slithered to the central platform. His scales were dark green, almost black, and his yellow eyes swept across the assembly with cold satisfaction. "Fellow members of the Galactic Assembly," he began, his voice echoing through the chamber, "I stand before you today to propose the Protection Against Primitive Aggression Act. This measure will safeguard our peaceful galactic community from the dangerous species known as humanity." A holographic display appeared above his head showing images of human history, wars, nuclear explosions, destruction, death. The images were real, Danny knew. They were the worst moments of human history, collected and presented without context or explanation. "Look at what these creatures do to each other," they continued. "They have weapons capable of destroying entire cities. They have waged wars that killed millions of their own kind. They poison their own planet with pollution and waste. Can we truly allow such a species to spread beyond their system? Can we risk them bringing their violence to our worlds?" Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. Danny saw heads nodding in the section, in a dozen other delegations. The fear was spreading like a disease. Ambassador rose to speak. Her voice was calm and measured, but Danny could hear the strain beneath it. "The images you have shown are accurate," she said. "Humanity has made terrible mistakes. We have hurt each other in ways that shame us. But those images do not tell the whole story. They do not show our art, our music, our literature. They do not show the billions of acts of kindness that happen every day on Earth. They do not show the way we care for our sick, our elderly, our children. They do not show who we truly are." The delegate laughed, a harsh sound like stones grinding together. "Pretty words, human, but actions speak louder than words, and your actions have been nothing but violence and destruction." "That is not true. We have changed. We are learning, we are growing." "Learning, growing. You have been a spacefaring species for barely 2 decades. You are infants playing with fire. The only responsible choice is to contain you before you burn the entire galaxy." The vote was called. Danny watched as delegation after delegation cast their support for the sanctions. One by one, the votes stacked against humanity. Then something unexpected happened. A single figure rose from the section. She was small and slender, with silver hair that floated around her shoulders. Her violet eyes were fixed on the central platform with a determination that Danny had never seen before. It was. The entire chamber fell silent. A princess had never spoken at the assembly. It was unheard of, unthinkable. The High Empress stared at her daughter with an expression that could have frozen stars, but walked forward anyway. Her steps were steady, and her head was held high. She climbed to the central platform and stood where the delegate had stood moments before. "I wish to speak," she said. Her voice was soft, but it carried to every corner of the chamber. "I wish to speak on behalf of humanity." The delegate sputtered in outrage. "This is highly irregular. A junior member of a delegation cannot simply claim the floor. There are protocols." "The protocols allow any member of a founding delegation to address the assembly on matters of critical importance," replied calmly. "I am a daughter of the Empire, and this matter is critical. Unless you wish to argue that the fate of an entire species is not important." They had no response to that. He slithered back to his seat, his yellow eyes burning with anger. Turned to face the assembly. For a moment, she looked small and fragile against the vastness of the chamber. But then she began to speak, and her words filled the space like light filling a dark room. "3 days ago, I sat alone on the observation deck of this station. I was hungry. I was lonely. I was invisible. In my entire life, not one person had ever shown me kindness without expecting something in return. I am a princess of the most powerful empire in the galaxy, and I had never experienced true compassion." She paused and looked directly at Danny. He felt his heart stop. Then a human found me, a simple maintenance worker with no rank or title or power. He saw me sitting in the dark, and he did something that no one in my life had ever done. He offered me half of his food. He asked nothing in return. He expected no reward. He simply saw someone who was struggling and chose to help. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The delegates looked at each other with confusion and curiosity. I did not understand at first, continued. Among my people, kindness is weakness. Resources are never shared freely. Everything is a transaction. But this human, this Danny Cole from a planet called Earth, showed me that there is another way. He showed me that strength can come from compassion. He showed me that true power is not taking from others but giving to them. She turned to face the delegation directly. You have shown us the worst of humanity, their wars and their weapons and their violence, but you have not shown us the whole truth. You have not shown us the way they care for strangers, the way they share food with the hungry, the way they reach out to the lonely and the lost. You have not shown us the word that exists in their language but not in ours, a word that describes the bond between souls who choose to help each other without expecting anything back. His voice grew stronger. They call it friendship. And in my entire life among the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, I had never experienced it until a human gave me half of his sandwich. The chamber was completely silent. Danny could hear his own heart pounding in his chest. I ask you, said, which is truly more dangerous? A species that has made mistakes but is learning to be better, or a galaxy full of ancient races who have forgotten what it means to care for each other? She looked at her mother, the High Empress, who sat frozen in her seat with an unreadable expression. I know what I choose hope, I choose kindness, I choose humanity. Stepped down from the platform and walked back to her seat. The silence stretched on for what felt like forever. Then slowly, the High Empress stood. Every eye in the chamber turned to her. The most powerful being in the galaxy looked at her youngest daughter with an expression that Danny could not interpret. The Empire votes against the sanctions, she said, and we propose a countermotion, full diplomatic relations with Earth, immediate establishment of an embassy on The chamber erupted into chaos. The vote that followed was not even close. With the Empire declaring support for humanity, the entire balance of power shifted. Species that had been ready to vote for sanctions suddenly reconsidered. Delegations that had ignored Earth now looked at the human section with new interest. The final count was overwhelming. The sanctions were rejected by a margin of 3-1. Humanity's place in the galactic community was not just preserved, it was elevated. The counterproposal passed easily, opening doors that humans had never dreamed of reaching. Danny sat in stunned silence as the results were announced. Around him, the human delegation was celebrating. Ambassador had tears streaming down her face. Her aides were hugging each other and laughing with relief. But Danny could only stare at the section, where had returned to her seat. The High Empress was speaking to her quietly, and Danny could not tell if she was being praised or punished. When the session ended, Danny pushed through the crowds toward the delegation. Several guards moved to stop him, but a sharp command from the High Empress made them step aside. Danny found himself face to face with the most powerful woman in the galaxy. She was taller than, and her violet eyes were cold and calculating. Her silver hair was arranged in an elaborate style that probably took hours to create. "You are the human," she said. It was not a question. "Yes, ma'am, your majesty, I mean." Danny stumbled over the words. He had no idea how to address an alien empress. "My daughter tells me you gave her food when she was hungry. She says you showed her kindness when everyone else ignored her." The empress studied him with those piercing eyes. "Why did you do this?" Danny swallowed hard. "Because it was the right thing to do, ma'am. Where I come from, you help people who need help. You do not ask what you will get in return. You just do it. Even if the person is a stranger, even if they are from a species you have never met. Yes, ma'am, especially then. My mother always said that kindness to strangers is the truest kindness because there is nothing in it for you. The High Empress was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. For 10,000 years, my empire has ruled through strength and fear. We have conquered worlds and crushed our enemies without mercy. We believed that kindness was weakness and compassion was a flaw. She glanced at who stood nearby with her head bowed. My youngest daughter has always been different. She has always been soft where her sisters are hard. I thought it was a defect, a failure in her nature. She turned back to Danny. But today, her softness changed the course of history. Today, her kindness gave your species a future. Perhaps I was wrong about what true strength looks like. Danny did not know what to say, so he said nothing. I would like to invite you to the Empress continued. Not as a diplomat or a representative, as a guest. I want my people to meet the human who showed my daughter the meaning of friendship. Me, but I am nobody. I am just a maintenance guy. The Empress almost smiled. You are the most important nobody in the galaxy right now, Danny Cole. Your small act of kindness has done more for your species than all the diplomats and speeches in this assembly. Do not underestimate yourself. She turned and walked away, her guards falling in behind her. Lingered for a moment, her violet eyes meeting Danny's. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. I did not do anything special. I just shared my lunch. No, shook her head. You did something that no one in this galaxy has done in thousands of years. You reminded us what it means to care about each other. You reminded us what we lost when we became so powerful that we forgot how to be kind. She reached out and took his hand, just as she had on the observation deck. Her cool fingers wrapped around his, and she held on tight. My mother wants to establish the embassy on our. She wants humans to come and live among us, to teach us. Smiled, a real smile that lit up her whole face. She also wants to meet the human who shared his lunch with her daughter. She is going to make you a diplomatic advisor. Danny laughed. I do not know anything about diplomacy. You know about kindness. You know about compassion. You know about friendship. Those are the things we need to learn. Everything else is just details. In the days that followed, Danny Cole became the most famous human in the galaxy. News of his small act of kindness spread across the stars. Other species sought him out, wanting to meet the human who had changed an empire with half a sandwich. He met with leaders and generals and scientists. He spoke to audiences of thousands. He became a symbol of everything humanity could be at its best. But through it all, he remained the same simple man from Ohio who fixed things for a living. He refused titles and honors. He refused to let the attention change who he was. I am just a guy who shared his lunch, he said in every interview. Anyone could have done it. Anyone should have done it. That is the whole point. And slowly, the galaxy began to change. The started programs to help the poor and the sick. The faced growing pressure from within their own empire to be less brutal. The began questioning their cold efficiency. Species that had been enemies for centuries found ways to work together. It was not fast. It was not easy. There were setbacks and failures and moments when it seemed like nothing would ever change. But the seed that Danny had planted with his small act of kindness continued to grow. Years later, Danny stood on the observation deck of a new space station, one built by humans and working together. Beside him stood, now the ambassador to Earth. Her silver hair floated around her shoulders, and her violet eyes sparkled with happiness. Do you remember the first time we met? She asked. Of course. You were sitting in the corner looking hungry and lonely. I gave you half my sandwich. You gave me more than that. You gave me hope. You gave me a reason to believe that the universe could be better than it was. Danny put his arm around her and she leaned into him. They had been through so much together. Diplomatic crises and assassination attempts and moments when it seemed like everything was falling apart. but they had made it through because they had each other. "You know what the best part is," Danny said. "What?" "Somewhere out there, right now, someone is sharing their lunch with a stranger. Someone is reaching out to help someone who is alone. Someone is choosing kindness over fear." He smiled. "And they probably have no idea that they are changing the universe." Looked up at him with love in her eyes. "That is the beauty of it. Every small act matters. Every kindness ripples outward. You taught me that." "My mom taught me that. I just passed it along." They stood together and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, a universe was being transformed, one small act of kindness at a time. It had started with a ham sandwich and a lonely princess. It had grown into something bigger than either of them could have imagined. And Danny Cole, the maintenance guy from Ohio who had never expected to leave Earth, knew that this was just the beginning. The story of humanity among the stars was not going to be written in wars and conquests. It was going to be written in moments of compassion, in hands reaching out to help strangers, in food shared with the hungry and comfort offered to the lonely. It was going to be written in friendship. And that, Danny thought, was exactly how it should be.